Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unfiltered with AUTOSOL. The topic of today's conversation is going to be SCADA Modernization Beyond the Control Room. My name is David Blanco. I'm the Vice President of Sales of AUTOSOL. I've been with AUTOSOL since Friday, May 27th, 2011, where I started off as an application engineer integrating AUTOSOL products and partner products, and I've just kind of been working my way throughout the industry in various roles since then. And today I'm joined by
Trent Franklin. I'm the Director of SCADA Engineering at AUTOSOL. I've been at AUTOSOL exactly 2 days after David. So I kind of started off in the application engineering space, worked my way up from application engineer to manager, and then now Director of SCADA, all while kind of maintaining a technical role and technical capacity. So I've been very much connected to the questions that we get from a lot of our customers and a part of their journey on going from legacy HMI to new HMI and what that really means, not just for the HMI, but for the connected applications.
All right. And for those of you who may be tuning in for the first time and don't know what AUTOSOL is the company that Trent and I are associated with. And AUTOSOL has been in business since 1987. It is a software and integration services provider for the industrial automation space. The software we make focuses on connecting clients to their data and allowing them to get valuable insights out of it. So the format of this show is going to be thusly. Pretty much, we have solicited questions from people through social media and the industry at large, and we've actually gotten some back. So we're going to discuss, I have the questions, I'm going to ask them to Trent, he's going to give our answer, we're going to have some conversation around it. You also have the ability to, if you're tuning in live, pose questions inside of the Bright Talk platform. So if you send us a question, I will be able to see it. And I don't have too many questions here, 8. I would like to get to some of them at the end as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick us off here. The first question that has been pre-submitted to us is from someone named Evan H., first-time caller, long-time listener. And his question for Trent here is, what exactly does SCADA modernization mean, and how do I know when it's time?
Good question. I think that there's a few ways that you can go about answering this, and I think that there's two things when it comes to modernization and what it really means. There's modernization of the control room, which is one whole conversation, but then really what we're here to talk about today is the modernization of everything beyond the control room. So how does the data, get into the control room, and then where does the data flow outside of the control room? And for me, my opinion is that the whole concept of modernization doesn't necessarily mean that we're ripping and replacing everything that we have and trying to replace it with something that's brand new. It means that we're evaluating what we have and ensuring that the applications that are in our tech stack and in our business are able to seamlessly communicate with each other, and they're using protocols that are common with things. Our architecture fits the business needs. So things like MQTT from edge all the way up to a business application or a business historian. Things like OPC UA. So we're using common standards, and then our applications support REST APIs where we can interface with them and write applications and automate processes much easier. So it's not really so much we need to replace everything, but it's about the evaluation of all of these things. And then you kind of take that one step further, and you get into the conversation about cybersecurity. So in the case of cybersecurity, is our application supporting the standards of today? So we have things like the TSA guidelines where they're forcing frequent updates based off of security patches or security vulnerabilities. How agile is it for your team to go in and make the updates that are necessary to each piece of whatever they need to go and update? So if you're updating radios, how difficult is that? If you're updating your HMI, how difficult is that? How fast can you do that? And if you have an application that takes you months to achieve this, that becomes a much more challenging topic.
So in your definition there of modernization, can you go into a little bit more detail about some of the problems that modernization may solve? Like when you talk about SCADA modernization, how does what you just say apply to like the tactical day-to-day application of running a SCADA system?
Yeah, so I think for that, we can start with talking about the protocols. I think the protocols is one of the most important things. If you have an HMI that is able to support the protocols that kind of support this whole foundation of a modern system, things like MQTT, you're able to get higher resolution of data and do more with the data, which we're going to touch on, hopefully a little bit later. I'm sure there's going to be questions about AI and other things that we can dive into. But then you have other applications that how do they consume data? And really what you're trying to get away from is applications that only know how to speak one specific thing. They're able to digest data in multiple different languages, and you can interface with them easier. The whole topic of what can my HMI provide to the business is the legacy architecture, where the HMI was the sole source of everything in your infrastructure. And we're seeing a shift now we're trying to make HMI pure. The SCADA system should be the SCADA system. It should not be the platform that everybody else in the business leverages their data from. Yes, some of the data will end up there, but we have customers that are starting to now decouple that data. So the data is now, necessary to the SCADA system, the data is going into SCADA. But if it's not necessary to the control room, there's no need to inundate your SCADA system with that information just because somebody on the business side needs that information. You can split that data off into two separate pieces, but your architecture has to support that. The applications in your business have to support that.
Yeah. So I guess one of the key takeaways about modernization here is data is no longer siloed into just SCADA, and it's not necessarily SCADA's responsibility to be the sole repository of that data or the sole means to acquire the data that these other downstream applications would need. Is that a fair interpretation?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to draw some parallels here to projects I know that you and I have worked on.
Yeah.
And I feel like, one of the ways to view something of what is something is you can say, okay, this is what it is through definition, and this is what it is by comparison. And in the comparison, you're saying, well, this is what it isn't, right? And I like in the beginning, you prefaced it with, it's not a rip and replace, and it's also not going to be, I can't remember the exact phrase you used, but it's not going to be this proprietary type of lock-in thing. So if who asked this question? Evan H. What exactly does SCADA modernization mean? If you're using a piece of software that's out of support, or you're using a piece of software that is running on an operating system that is no longer supported, I would make the argument that that's probably not a modern SCADA system.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it lacks the cybersecurity that you mentioned a modern SCADA system would have. Yeah. And it's going to be very hard to integrate that. One product I think has been out of support several years now, WinCCU, right? There's still a lot of people who use WinCCU, great application, scalable, does what it needs to do. But I would argue that with this definition, that would not be a modern SCADA system. If you're relying on a piece of software that's out of support for years, on an operating system that's out of support, it's probably time to upgrade to something.
Yeah, not necessarily a modern SCADA system, but a supporting application, right? It's collecting all of your data. And in my opinion, something that we would classify as modern in this context is they would be taking the information that's out of WinCCU, and you would be able to leverage APIs and other technologies to seamlessly integrate that data that was in WinCCU previously into that platform. So something like AUTOSOL. I'm not here to sell our software, but we support an API where you can write an application, consume the data from WinCCU, and then get that information over to our platform. Once you have it in our platform, you could do anything with it. You could send it to SCADA, you could send it to the business, you could send it to CSV files or databases, wherever you want it to go. But having the ability to be able to be agile with the data that we collect is really the most important thing.
Okay. Yeah, and there's a phrase that you said that, well, you didn't say the phrase, but it reminded me of this phrase, what I'm trying to say. And that is, the flexibility, the adaptability. A modern SCADA system solves the problem that you have, has a low total cost of ownership. And to your comment about not making SCADA the bottleneck, I feel like there's a different way to phrase it, and that is it's a vector for growth now. Yeah. Right? Like now, SCADA is not going to be the bottleneck for your company to post data to the cloud or do something like that. Now, with a modern SCADA system, it can be a vector for growth for two types of growth, right? Physically, your company's adding assets in. Can this software scale? Yeah. to meet that need without re-engineering it every time. And then the other one is the business scaling, right? The sophistication of your business is changing. Can your modern SCADA system send data to a cloud? Can you support a UNS?
Yeah.
Can you do any of the other types of modern things people want to do with their data? And is there enough data?
Yeah.
So
I think to just kind of summarize that and put a bullet in it, is my SCADA system and the supporting applications, are they able to support the needs of the business, or has the business outgrown the supporting applications?
Like that.
Yeah.
Just put on a challenge coin. So for the interest of time here, good dialogue. Thank you. I have the second question. This one is from Julie B, first-time listener, long-time caller. And her question is, what should we consider when evaluating our current SCADA architecture?
Okay. I think that there's probably 2 or 3 things that we can dive into there, and a lot of it kind of plays off of the last question. So there's going to be the technical piece, the operational piece, and then we touched on cybersecurity a little bit as well. When we're talking about the technical side, in the last question we were talking about the interoperability of all of these applications. So how difficult is it for me to get data from one application to another? Does my architecture support that? How much time does an engineer have to spend working with an application to be able to get the data in and out of that? So what we're really looking for is applications that are open, that can be easily interfaced with. They support several different methods of interaction. It's not just from MQTT, but they have REST APIs and things like that. And then we get into other things like single vendor stuff, right? So we see these large HMIs where the HMIs themselves have every piece of application cooked into it. So the HMI might be the HMI, it might be the calculations, it might also be the drivers and the polling. It might also do hydraulic modeling. It might have leak detection, all built into it. But the thing that you have to ask yourself is this really what my business needs? And are these the best in class solutions for these? And if the answer is no, and there's ways that you can integrate other applications into what you already have, again, gets back to the last question. We don't have to rip and replace everything. We just have to stop using this one piece of it. So in my mind, we want to have an architecture that supports modularity for best in class, everything.
Yeah. And I guess another way to interpret the question is, when should we consider, when evaluating our current SCADA system, in terms of modernization? Like when should we modernize, right?
Yeah.
And I think back to the example I gave earlier. If your software is out of support,
yeah,
it's probably not. There's no roadmap then, and the operating system's not there. That's your sign that it's probably time to modernize for a variety of reasons. But at the core there, the cybersecurity reasons.
Just to add one more thing there, you mentioned cybersecurity. If we're talking about cybersecurity in the context of your architecture and the supporting applications, can your supporting applications all support the requirements of today? So what I mean by that is, we're seeing a lot of we're getting a lot of requests for our stuff. Single sign-on, multi-factor authentication. Do they support 2-factor authentication with tokens? Do they support passkeys now? So the cybersecurity landscape is always changing, and if your applications are not able to keep pace with that, then that's probably a sign that there's time for a change.
Yeah. Our next question comes from Lisa A, and it is, how do you modernize a SCADA system when it's brownfield? Greenfield. So I guess, how do you modernize a SCADA system when it's brownfield versus how do you modernize a SCADA system when it's greenfield?
Okay. I guess we'll start with brownfield, because that's probably where the majority of the people that are listening and will hopefully be watching afterwards are going to be. I think it's pretty rare that you encounter a greenfield opportunity where you have full buy-in of everything. And the thing that, if you are starting this experience or this journey, you have to realize is it's not a overnight thing. This is not something where tomorrow you're going to have, your whole system is going to be modernized. And if you have somebody telling you that, they're wrong, and you should not trust them. This is something that is a strategic initiative from the business. So what you really need is you have to have buy-in from executive leadership, and that's really where the conversation starts. So this is a journey where you're going to have that conversation initially up front, get the buy-in, get the approvals, and then what you really need to do is you need to holistically look at your architecture and try to find the weakest link in your architecture. So when we're looking at a brownfield deployment, what applications support where we're trying to go? So if we start off here in the brownfield and this is what we have today, where do we want to be 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now? Do our applications of today support that? And that's really where the conversation starts. And once you've identified some of those applications, you can start plotting a path for proof of concepts, bringing in vendors, entertaining integrators, and getting user experiences. Talk to your peers and figure out what they're doing. There's a lot of companies and a lot of customers that we work with that are, they're very much on the forefront of this kind of technology, and they're experiencing this. So you're probably not the only one that's going through this journey. So you have a lot of resources at your disclosure.
Yeah. A little comment there or observation on that last point is, everyone's trying to do this, but everyone's going to do it in a slightly different way. Absolutely. Right? And there are communities out there for whatever you're trying to do. And I would highly suggest joining one. AUTOSOL has a vibrant community. If you're watching the oil and gas space, IOGC has a vibrant community. There's a lot of places to go for answers to your questions. And I kind of also want to just, what you said triggered something in me. I think that there's a different way to look at the modernization approach between brownfield and greenfield, right? What I've seen a lot of clients do is they'll either be laying new pipe, drilling new wells, and they'll take this new asset as an opportunity to run that proof of concept for this modernization. So sometimes the assets are technically brownfield, but the capital is there to do a greenfield experiment with this technology on there. Either, okay, look, I'm on SCADA system A. I just acquired SCADA system B. I'm thinking about system C.
Yeah.
If you get, if you're persuasive enough internally and you have a vendor who can help you do that, you can probably say, hey, look, I want to take SCADA system B and I want to roll it in as the new one is C. It's going to do this, that. And if we like it, we can then roll 8 into it. I have been on projects where that's an approach. And to your point about how I can't remember exactly what you said, but it's not a sprint, it's a marathon kind of mentality between these types of modernization projects. It's also a exercise where the goal is constantly shifting. Think back to a commercial that you used to watch on Nick at Night with your grandma or your parents, and you see those commercials of like the house of the future and the car of the future. Well, it's the future as conceived of in 1955, right? What they thought a car in 2025 would be is very different. So the modernization process is really about the agility and the flexibility you talked about when you were answering Evan's question of you're making a system that's going to be flexible and scalable to whatever ends up being. Because if you say, I'm going to do A, and it's going to take me 4 or 5 years, and I'm going to get to B, and nothing's going to change in the environment I'm operating in the next 5 years, I would not call that a path to success.
I would agree.
So, and also sometimes the difference between greenfield and brownfield that I've seen is greenfield tends to be like that initial foray into new thought and new processes. I want my company to do something different. Right. Sometimes people fall into a trap with brownfield. They think, oh, I'm going to make my brownfield modern. But what they're really doing is they're tricking themselves into, oh, I'm changing how this works and that works and that works and this works and all this process can be better. At the end of the day, they're actually just solving for one problem that they have. And they're going to do all this, and they're still going to have the systemic issues of SCADA's the bottleneck, or total cost of ownership is still high. Yeah. Or actually, I did all that work and my system cannot physically grow with this acquisition. Yeah. Now what have I done? So the trap to avoid is if you're doing to directly answer the question, sorry, I know you're supposed to be answering them. To directly answer the question, in my humble opinion, how do you modernize a SCADA system that's brownfield, Lisa? It's make sure if you're doing a brownfield project, you're not tricking yourself into just solving for 1 or 2 issues. Oh, data drops. Okay, MQTT can fix it. A cloud server may not be the answer for that particular problem. So make sure that as you do this modernization, there's other factors taken into consideration than one pain point. There's tactical applications of this technology, obviously, but from the high level one. And sorry, do you want to say something?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Just one real quick thing. You're talking about the greenfield and how their journey is much different than the brownfield. The brownfield, they have legacy technology, they have technical debt, they have to figure out how they handle that. So when I was talking about having a business strategy, that's the most important thing. You have to have a plan for, here's what we have, let's evaluate it, figure out what the weak links are, and start the rip and replace for those key components. It's not the full enterprise thing. It's only the ones that we need to actually touch. So this is like deploying an edge box and then having a technology that supports the consumption of this high resolution data, having the historians that are able to also store this information at the verbosity that your business is requiring. But at the end of the day, they end up in the same place. And that's the most important thing to think about, is they're going to end up in the same place. It's just how you get there is going to be drastically different. How you got this job is drastically different than how I got this job. Even when we first started, you had a different path. I had a completely different path, but we all ended up in the same place. And as long as you have that vision of this is where we need our business to be and here is why, then the goals will align at the end.
Yeah. I like that edge thing as well, because what I like about edge technology so much is it works for both. It works for greenfield, it works for brownfield, and it helps you bifurcate the data. So now it's coming from the edge. What SCADA needs goes to SCADA, and then what the cloud or what the historian or Databricks needs goes up to them as well. Yeah. There's a question has come in that I feel like was a follow-up question to our second question. So I'm going to read that one real quick because it's a good question, and we're seeing it up on the big board here. So the question was from Julie B. What should we consider when evaluating our current SCADA architecture? And a follow-up to some of the dialogue was, how do you combat the mindset of if it isn't broken, don't fix it? How can someone make the case that risk of inertia or technical debt is creating a liability for the business operations?
Yeah, I think it gets back to what we just talked about. It's if your business strategy is to just keep doing what you're currently doing, then you have nothing to replace. You're doing what your business is calling for. But if you start to see that there are gaps or things are more challenging for you to do, so getting data from point A to point B, or getting these reports built because you have to touch 6 different things, those are signs that yes, while your current process is working, it's not working as efficiently as it should be. So that's where you start to evaluate these different things are there better avenues, or are there better ways to do what we're trying to do? And are we doing it the most efficient way possible? Just because it's been done this way for 15 years doesn't mean it's the right way of doing things.
Yeah. And to add a little bit to that, I feel like the sales answer is prove a return on investment.
Yeah.
If it's not broken, don't fix it. And I feel like that's the mentality of fear at the end of the day. It's, I don't want to take this risk of doing something because I might break something.
Yeah.
And what I have right now isn't broken. Man was happy in a cave. I don't think anyone's roof ever leaked when we lived in caves, right? But yet now no one lives in a cave, right?
Some
So
people still want to.
it wasn't broken, but we didn't need to fix it. And life has improved because we gained those type of efficiencies.
Yeah.
So I think I would answer directly that to get someone out of that mindset, it is to prove a return on investment for this. I think I read somewhere that people actually perceive loss at twice the rate they perceive gain. A 50K loss on the stock market hurts more than a 100K in gain, or a 99.999 whatever $1,000 gain brings you joy.
Yeah. So
I think the best way to subvert that is to prove a return on investment that would be, back to the first thing that you said about a modern SCADA system has a low total cost of ownership. You can prove that, hey, this technology actually makes it easier to do it. We send people out less to the trucks. We have less missing data. We can optimize the well better, things like that. So great question. Sorry, I could not read the name. It was a little too far, but thank you.
You're bringing up
Jay.
Thank
you, JT.
JT, not Justin Timberlake. You bring up ROI, and I feel like it's important to understand. I'm not sure what specifically the thing is that Jay was talking about there, but when we're talking about ROI, I feel like it's important to give an example. So you mentioned edge boxes, you mentioned MQTT. We were working with a customer at one point where they basically said for any time that they had to send a customer to a customer site and then commission something, it was roughly in the area of $2,000 to $3,000 just for that visit and the commissioning, and that's including the time for configuring the PLC or configuring the edge box, installing the edge box, and then commissioning all the tags that were coming from it. So yes, that's $2,000 to $3,000. Now, let's say, for example, that customer had 500 sites. So whatever $200 or $2,000 is times 500 sites, that's roughly $1 million. In that example, we're saying, hey, it's going to cost $1 million to go and do this. So that becomes a very difficult sell to your executive leadership for them to go in and buy into this. But what they have to realize is that the ROI comes on the back end. The back end of that is, yes, they invested this much time to deploy these things, but here's what it's solving for us. And what it's solving for us is the ease of integration of that data in every other business application that we have. The ability for you to take that the time to deploy something. So we do this for a lot of our customers where we're having to add assets into their SCADA system, and maybe they're not at the forefront of edge technology. So the process of adding those tags is we have to map out the tags, we have to model the data, we have to figure out what templates they fit, we then have to build it, and then we have to build the communication objects within the system. Well, once you start introducing some of these edge technologies, that process goes from something that might take you 4 to 5 hours to do down to minutes, because the whole advent of MQTT allows you to self-discover these things and automatically build these tags and automatically build these templates, as long as your supporting applications support that. So the ROI comes on the back end where yes, there's upfront cost. There's so much benefit downstream of it, which is why people are looking at this.
Yeah, I think in the ROI mindset as well, and to the question that JT and Julie B had asked, I think usually that type of, should we modernize? What signs am I looking on to modernize? And then trying to convince someone else at your organization to modernize with you. We usually juxtaposition these decisions against something else.
Yeah.
So I'll use an example that we work with a lot, or that's, I guess, topical to events that have happened in the past maybe 2 or 3 months. If you're an upstream oil and gas producer, you have a SCADA system, perhaps even just called a data acquisition system. And the HMI software that you currently have, everybody's been using it for the past 10, 15 years. Nobody really sees a reason to change. It does everything you want to do, but you don't see a path forward with it for a variety of reasons. Maybe there's a lack of a roadmap. Maybe there's a lack of these interoperable technologies you mentioned earlier, MQTT, Spark-Plug-B. I can't remember if you said it's Spark-Plug-B specifically, but you got MQTT, you got Spark-Plug-B, you got OPC UA, you have cloud connectivity. And one of the ways I think is to get over that mindset is to just ask for a proof of concept. Yeah. Vendors, as a vendor, here's a secret. Just ask for a proof of concept deal with a vendor, and they will gladly work with you on something to help you prove your case internally, to see these type of, I forgot the word you used, external, the benefits, yeah. The benefits of this technology. And then you can juxtaposition that with how you currently do business. So yeah, my grandfather's oxen plow wasn't broken, but you know what? My dad still bought a John Deere. Yeah. Funny how that works, right? And what the POC is going to help you do is hard to find those return on investments. Hey, look, I did not, the field with this edge technology, I only sent someone out there twice in the past 4 months versus someone's on a regular rotation on these technologies. So this POC site cost me the initial, $8,000 in total to operate it, whereas this field cost me $60,000. Yeah. And those can build on top of each other. Remember, you don't want to just solve for one thing and call it modernization, although these technologies can do it if that's where you're constrained. But I would just say, as a vendor, the trick is to do a proof of concept, because you then have the technology in hand. And it's one thing to hear about someone talk about something like this. It's a whole other thing to get it in your hands, in your house. I bought a spice grinder off Amazon 10 years ago, and I've never once ground spice. It's my coffee grinder, but I'm still happy I bought it, and it still suits me. I have modernized my coffee experience with it.
We're gonna have to get you a ceramic one.
I hear they're better.
Yeah.
But terrible analogy for this. It's all that came to mind.
Well, just to add one more thing on that, you were talking about the ROI, and, sending people out less. I think there's a secondary effect of it, which is you see this a lot in brownfield systems where you have this process, your system's been in place for 15 to 20 years, and somebody wrote an application that does this, or somebody wrote a script that does this, and it's just been there, and it's worked, and it's just worked. But that guy's going to retire at some point, and who's going to support that script? So what we're trying to figure out is ways that we can start to cut out those middle pieces, the things that cause friction within the business. That what we're trying to do is make more time. So if we can send the data from point A to the final destination without having all of that middleware to take and process this information, then it makes your processes more efficient, and you're able to reduce that friction, which is effectively freeing up your time. So that's, in my mind, where the ROI comes in.
A thought came to me and then left. What was the first sentence you said? I wanted to add it. What?
When?
Okay, well, that doesn't really help. Great dialogue.
Yeah, great dialogue.
Great dialogue. All right, well, on that note,
middleware, software,
it'll come to me.
Scripts,
it'll come to me randomly.
Yeah.
For the sake of time and the fact that people did submit questions, I would like to get to the next question.
Got it.
So Phil E asks, does modern SCADA always mean moving to the cloud? I don't feel like we've even talked about the cloud yet.
Do you want to start this one off, or should I? Because I can give a one-word answer.
I will say this, that this is, if someone's tuning in non-live, this is being filmed a day after AWS cloud shut down.
Yeah.
So I feel like kind of in a bind here, giving a full-throated answer of absolutely 100%, 99.9% efficient. It just depends on, it depends, right? Great answer. So with that, I'll let you say perhaps a 3-word answer.
Yeah, it depends is always the answer. But in this case, in my mind, the answer is no. It doesn't necessitate a move to the cloud. I think what you're doing is you're looking at the different pieces of software that are in your business, and you're strategically moving things into the cloud. So things like your historians, right? You can put a historian in the cloud, and it's not going to hurt your operations. Your operations can still be safe, and it's on-prem. What we're seeing a lot of customers doing now is they're taking maybe their DR, or maybe they're taking a server that they use for like business user viewing of the SCADA system, and they're putting those in the cloud. And it's just to give them a more agile architecture. But having your entire SCADA system as a whole in the cloud, I think, is a little aggressive. It's funny, you were joking about the AWS stuff a minute ago, and I was joking with you yesterday about it, that when that happened, things like Roblox were down for my kid. So he was just in shambles. He couldn't play Roblox. Oh, dear God. And, on my way to work, I was trying to order a coffee. I couldn't order a coffee at Starbucks. So things like that, things that are not going to, critical operations, sure, put those in the cloud. My coffee in the morning is not critical operations.
My grinder still works.
Yeah, exactly. Roblox is not critical operations. I mean, maybe it is for him, but not for me.
Yeah. Just no on the question. Does modernization always mean moving to the cloud? No. I will redefine modernization, right? Modernization solves your problems, has low total cost of ownership relative to the current way of doing things, and is a vector for growth, right? It's a vector for physical growth, and it's a vector for, I would say, the sophistication, the business part of your company. And that does not require a cloud. There are a lot of great cloud tools available, like he mentioned, right? AI platforms, UNS platforms, even some HMIs that are in the cloud that do what they need to do. But no, if someone's saying the only way to modernize is to buy my cloud, they're not selling you modernization. They're selling you a cloud subscription.
That's right.
So, no. Yeah. There you go. How often do you get a real? No.
No.
Boy, it kind of feels good to say. Yes? No.
Yeah. So,
next question here is from someone named Jeremy K. And little pointed here. What should we be asking SCADA vendors to avoid lock-in or technical debt down the road?
Yeah, I think this gets back to the first two questions that we had, where we were talking about, what is modernization, and I forget what the second question specifically was. I think it had something to do about architectures, but what we're looking at is what is your roadmap? You have to understand what the software vendor's vision is, and if that software vendor is going to be able to support the needs of your business in the coming future. If they're not, or maybe they don't have a roadmap, then the answer in my mind is to start looking elsewhere. They need to be able to support the future of your business. They also have to support portability, like we talked about earlier. So what you're looking at there is, do they support the different modules or different interfaces that our business might require? So things like MQTT, things like REST APIs, things like OPC UA. Are we able to get that information out of that platform and then into other pieces of our business? And if they're not putting that on a roadmap, then that's important. The other thing is, are we going to be locked into some terrible pricing model where if we want to start, horizontally scaling our business, they're going to start charging us, an arm and a leg for that. They're going to penalize us for it. And if the answer to that is they will, well, I think you have your answer.
I would approach it from a similar angle, but a slightly different speed, I guess. And that is, to repeat the question, what should we be asking SCADA vendors to avoid locking in our technical debt down the road? I think there's two types of way to use a vendor's technology, right? You're buying it because of the features, the usability, or you're buying it because of the scalability. Ideally, they have both. And there's ways that people get locked into each one. At some point earlier, you mentioned the type of monolithic systems that do the, they do the polling, they do the historian, they do the measurement, they do the HMI, they do the calculations. If it does everything, it really, that's locked in. Because now that company's focus is not going to be all 5 of those things. They're really focusing on 2 of those things, and the other 3 things there are to check the box and make it palatable. Sure, these 2 things go really well, but there's a lot of work on these other 3 things that we'll just have the staff to handle it. And in that kind of situation, you're locked in there. If that platform is not keeping up with field protocols or the interoperable ones, the MQTT, the Spark-Plug-B, the OPC UA, well, how do you integrate that if this one piece of technology does everything? A strategy a lot of our clients use is they are able to pick from the best in class of each layer, either Purdue or data flow, conceptualize it however you wish. They pick the best in class solution from each layer of their operations. And assuming that they're modern, they have the interoperable protocols necessary to talk to each other. And then they avoid lock-in. Like it's the black box approach versus the, I know how it works, and therefore I can swap out the pieces when, like you mentioned, that there's no roadmap. If this part of my chain, like my data flow, goes out of business, well, I can easily replace it. There's going to be 5 other ones who do something similar. And then you can really build the best-in-class solution for what you're trying to do, because edge technology A may be really good at optimizing flow on artificial lifts or gas lifts specifically. And it also happens to have a Modbus to MQTT polar. Yeah. So do you pay the price for all that when you just need a Modbus to MQTT converter in the field? Probably not. Yeah. Sorry, I feel like I'm sitting on you a little bit here.
I was just going to go and take it one step further when we're talking about the black box and lock-in. Some of these applications where they do everything, there's a steep learning curve to those applications. But I think you're unknowingly handicapping your SCADA engineers by not exposing them to some of the newer technologies that are out there. And what that does is that also ramps up the onboarding time that it takes for some of these other users. When you're trying to find new engineers that are out in the industry, and let's say you're trying to hire somebody new because you need more staff, getting them trained up on something that is black boxed it's difficult for them to get training. It's difficult for them to understand what those applications are. So what it ends up doing is you're locking yourself into a solution, and you're locking yourself into a specific vendor who's basically permanently going to plant a resource there. And what you're trying to do is the complete opposite. You're trying to create a modular application, modular architecture and hierarchy where you can get somebody, out of college that understands a lot of the technologies that a lot of these businesses are using today, because they're open standards. They're easily accessible. They can learn them as they're young, and they're not walled from learning these new technologies.
Yeah, it's kind of a negative feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
If you are, I think what Jay asked us earlier, right? You're at a company that's like, well, it's not broke, don't fix it. You're at a company with a monolithic SCADA system that doesn't have a roadmap. Nobody wants to change. Staff is learning a dying technology.
Yeah.
Is the staff of that company, and I saw a question here on the board that someone has submitted that has AI in it. So I don't want to go too far down that, but is the staff of this company integrating AI tools? Are they exploring how there's any extra efficiency, or is their day consumed by propping up and maintaining something so it's not broken? Like, that's the almost hypocrisy. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Well, it's not broken because I spend all my time maintaining it. And I don't think anyone's job should be 100% maintenance unless that's your title, right? Maintenance. But if you're in SCADA, there's different ways you can provide value to the business than just constantly putting out fires. At some point, you have to ask, man, why does this building keep catching fire? Right. And there's something a little fun here I'll also say about that. One of the best ways to prepare yourself, when you have vendor lock-in, you're more susceptible to that, oh, shoot, what I'm using suddenly doesn't have a roadmap. If the product that your whole system is running off of doesn't have a future, neither does your SCADA system. Yeah. So that's probably back to that second question that I forgot Julie asked or Evan asked, is when do I know it's the right time? That's definitely, the flag's red because the flag's on fire, right? So that's the time. So real quick, because we're quickly running out of time, and I want to get to this AI question that someone has submitted. So Patrick O would like to know, how does AI impact SCADA planning?
Man, what a time to be alive, right? It's everywhere now. It's the buzzword. It's all around us, and I feel like we're seeing AI branching out more into things now than what we had in over the last year, and the rate of which it's advancing and getting involved in things is only getting faster. A year ago, LLMs were, you'd use them to generate dialogue for something, or to use them to generate images, and you can go see like videos of Will Smith eating spaghetti, right? That kind of stuff. You could see that, and you could see the progression 1 year later, and just see how fast it's or how much it's improved just with its self-learning. And what we're seeing now is we're seeing a lot of that translating into the SCADA system, but it starts with a modernized SCADA system. For you to be able to start leveraging AI, this is where you get into the concept of contextualization of your data, a unified namespace. If anybody here has never heard of those terms, basically think of contextualization of your data as modeling of your data. So think of, I have a flow rate. Okay, that's great. But once you have that flow rate and you have the context of everything around that flow rate, then you can actually start to do more things with that data. So the contextualization is the modeling of the data. You're creating the semantic hierarchy that mimics your enterprise. And the idea is that for a unified namespace, every application in your business can tie into this structure and receive the same piece of data, rather than getting it from one source who then pushes it to another source, who then pushes it to another source after they manipulate something. And then you have 4 different variants of how you consider, AUTOSOL, building temperature. You have this whole stream down for the hierarchy on how you get there, and then everybody talks the same language. The reason that's important is because as we get into AI, AI has to be able to interpret what it is that we're looking at. You can't just give AI, a splattering of data and have it make sense of it. You have to give it something that is structured and it can look at and predict. So if it can understand what the model of that data is, it can then start making educated decisions. So what we're seeing is what was promised to us 15 years ago. You see all these companies that are doing predictive maintenance, and a lot of them failed at doing that. And the reason was they didn't have two things. They didn't have the structure of the data that they needed. The data just wasn't mature enough. The second thing is they didn't have the verbosity of the data. So when we're talking about these edge technologies, we're talking about getting high resolution data. So we're not just getting, a pressure every hour or a pressure every 30 minutes from some of these well sites, for example. We're getting pressures every 5 seconds. And once you have that context and that verbosity of the data with everything else, these systems can start to train themselves on detecting anomalies and other things. And we're now seeing a reintroduction of this predictive maintenance stuff that was promised to us 10, 15 years ago. And now it's coming back around, but they're coming back more effective.
I'm going to take a moment here and grandstand a little bit on that topic. I just sent, that's why I was typing a second ago, I just sent a PowerPoint that I've been playing with to our producer, Sal, here. And I think he's going to show a slide here of a tweet that I saved a couple weeks ago. I'm making a presentation on this topic. Let's see if he can show us. Yeah, here we go. So real quick, the question was, how does AI impact SCADA planning? So from a SCADA perspective, are you planning the operations AI Databricks layer? No, you're not planning that. But your system is part of that system. So you have a role to play. And to Trent's point, data is your role. Usually SCADA teams are the ones who are doing the data acquisition piece for that company. And here's a quote from, whether or not you like them, the Oracle CEO, whose name I didn't write down when I made this note. And I saw it on a TikTok, but it was him at a show last week. And he said, quote, "You have to unify all your data so it can be consumed by an AI model." So to answer the question directly, how does AI impact SCADA systems or SCADA planning? Data. To support an AI system as a SCADA department, you need to supply, I think he used the word verbosity. A lot. You need a lot of data, and it needs to be in some sort of palatable, unified namespace where everybody can consume the same data. That is your role in the broader AI, without having to integrate a chat, like some sort of agent into your software. That's not what I'm talking about. Just the cloud AI type of things that are happening. Your role is to get data. And I think to understand what SCADA's role is in AI planning, it's to understand what is AI today. So what triggered me about this tweet that I saw, Ethan Mollick, for those of you who don't know, and if he's watching this, at me, bro, he is a AI researcher, and he's got some great stuff. So basically, in this one, he is basically trying to say, why has AI not taken off? At least in the oil and gas industry and broader automation industry, there feels like there was a moment in 2017, 18, late 19, just before COVID, where everyone had an LLM or some sort of cloud-based optimization platform or solution or algorithm or something. And it went nowhere. It kind of collapsed. And I never could figure out why. Like I feel like I just observed it. Why did this collapse? Ethan here has the idea. It's this idea of reverse salient. And here's my notes from this presentation that we're looking at here. It's reverse salient is a term from the history of science for a technology or process that holds back the whole system. And because that is the obstacle, that then becomes the way. This part that's holding back the system is the focus of everybody. So in 2018, go 2 slides forward, would you? Sorry, here, yeah. So this is the example for electricity, right? There was an invention phase. Aha, I can make electricity using fuel. There was a transfer phase where this idea is catching on in other places. And that really speeds up the innovation of it. And then lastly, there's the growth and expansion phase, right? Everybody wants to grow and expand because the idea is that you want to be able to produce this new technology at scale and cheaper. So for electricity, right, they created a way to make it. They created like the fuel types, whale fat, coal, gas, kerosene, whatever. And then what happened was transmission. They're generating DC current. So someone had to invent alternating current to transmit it large distances, and then we convert it back locally. Next slide, if you'd be so kind, sir. Hopefully what you can see at home is this screen, right? This is what I've been putting together to try to contemplate how AI, like the struggles of AI in 2018, right? We created cloud infrastructure, someone made these LLMs, and then they stumbled because lack of data. They started getting this data and they realized, oh, I need more data. Oh, I need it in a different format. Oh, my protocol can't handle it. My monolith SCADA system doesn't support the cloud connectivity protocol that this model would require. But now I feel like with UNS and these type of platforms that we see, we have broker technology, all that, we're getting past this reverse salient, right? The reverse salient is the barrier to full adoption of it. So AI struggles with struggled with the idea of, hey, look, I'm not getting enough data and it's not in the right format for me to be able to process it because I don't know what 40,001 is in the cloud. I need context to it. I need metadata to it. And so to bring it back to SCADA planning, long-winded, I know, but it's kind of a fun topic for everybody right now, right? It's that data should be the focus of the SCADA systems when it comes to AI right now, because without that data piece, no amount of millions of dollars of AWS or Azure infrastructure is going to produce the return on investment that you've banked this project on.
Yeah, and to take it one step further, you talked about planning. That's the whole premise of the question. I think to go beyond just the acquisition of the data or the verbosity of the data, it's the people that are using it, the people that are interfacing with it. I think one of the most important things that we could do as integrators and as leaders in the industry is to start fluency with AI. So what that means is not just I'm using AI to ask it a question, it's how do I effectively interface with it? How can I ask it meaningful questions to get meaningful data back? So for young engineers or older engineers that are not using it yet, you probably should start. And it starts with just understanding how to interface with it and what questions not to ask, because you're getting, David said it earlier, negative feedback or negative feedback loops, or maybe you start getting artifacts back. But you have to understand that a lot of these AI platforms and LLMs, they're based off of parameters. So if you can give it a series of parameters and get information back within those parameters, you're setting yourself up for more success. But if you just give it, hey, tell me some restaurants that are nearby, it's not going to give you much. It's going to say, all right, well, here's a bunch of restaurants. It's, well, hey, I want to go to one of these restaurants and I'm looking for this type of food within this dollar budget. Well, then it becomes more meaningful. And again, this gets back to context. So I was trying to explain this concept the other day to my wife and kids. It's what is context? And it's, I'm hungry. Okay. I'm hungry because I haven't eaten all day. That's more meaningful than just I'm hungry. So now I have a little bit more, I can treat the conversation differently because I know that, oh, wow, you've missed 2 meals in a row. We should probably get you some food here soon. Otherwise you're going to start, having an attitude, or your mood's going to change. So now it becomes more impactful. So having that context is everything. So
yeah, I agree.
I'll take it one step further. So what we're seeing a lot of now, there's AI, and what we're seeing now is agentic AI. I think you're going to see a lot of this over the next coming months. The conversations have already kind of started for a lot of people. If you're unfamiliar with what agentic AI is, think of it as a autonomous process that was designed to do a specific task or a series of specific tasks. So you have your LLMs, and that's fine. But agentic AI is based off of MCP, so multi-context protocol. And basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to find ways that we can, just like with REST APIs for our applications that we have on the SCADA side, there's a API for the LLMs and for the different AI interfaces that we have. So if we can start interfacing with those through the MCP, and we can design an MCP server, we can start to tie those into our applications of today. And this kind of gets back to the ROI conversation that we had earlier. And this is really what gets me the most excited, is because we can start to leverage some of these things today, but we have to start the planning process. So an example of where agentic AI might be very, very useful. We at AUTOSOL have a AUTOSOL communication server. We have a log server where we're spitting out log data for transmits and receives. Well, if we have a little agent that we design that sits on the background and is looking at some of these log files, we could identify inefficiencies in communication patterns within devices and channels and different radios and start to advise on changes. Other examples, taking it back into the control room, might be something on the forefront of like alarm rationalization. So we've got a bunch of alarms that are coming in. An operator is reviewing those alarms. But we can start to look at alarm patterns and start to make changes based off of nuisance alarms, certain alarm parameters, and start to make those changes or suggestions. I don't think agentic AI is to the point yet where we want them making changes in the SCADA system, but advising on changes, I think, is definitely its place and where it's definitely the most applicable today.
Yeah, and just to get back to the monolith comment, I don't think AI in SCADA will ever be a monolith application that does it all. It'll be a series of agentic, is that what you call them?
Agentic AI.
Agentic AI is probably working in concert.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So we are running up on time here. I do see that we've got a couple more questions here to ask, but unfortunately we're out of time. I appreciate the engagement and dialogue, and hopefully we can take inspiration from some of those questions and use them as maybe the topic for the next Unfiltered with AUTOSOL. So just to recap real quick, I took some notes. Hopefully I captured the essence of the conversation right. Modern SCADA, what is it? Modern SCADA is not, as you said, a rip and replace. Right. And my interpretation from our last, so it's not a rip and replace. It's not a front on the AI arms race. You don't just do AI to do AI. It's also not a way to solve for one specific issue. To get into what modern SCADA is, it is a tool, a series of tools that lets you solve for multiple issues while also having a low total cost of ownership and creating, I guess, SCADA as a vector for growth of your company. I think you said it well, horizontally or vertically, with the capability of adding the agentic AIs when the right ones come out for the right application. And so would you like to have any closing remarks?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is what we had talked about earlier. It's not an overnight change. This is a journey that you guys have to start, and it's something that you have to have buy-in from the top level down. So it's not just a decision; it's a strategic vision of the business and a direction that your business is going as a whole.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. If you would like to learn more about our company, we're called AUTOSOL, www.autosoln.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn as Automation Solutions. Trent and I are also very active in that space. Once again, I'm David Blanco.
Trent Franklin.
Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you.